Hi, I'm Bruce Bonebrake. Welcome to this installment of the AutoZone Do-It-Yourself video series. Whether you drive a sports car or an 18-wheeler, having precise, responsive steering is essential for safe operation of today's vehicles. The thing is, over time, steering components can wear out. This can happen so gradually that the driver might not notice a change until the problem becomes severe. The steering on this 1988 Mustang has begun to show signs of trouble. When the steering wheel is turned, it often sticks in a certain spot, and pulling the wheel harder will cause it to release. This is a potentially dangerous problem and needs to be repaired. So it's time to take it back to the shop and fix it. The conventional linkage steering system can be found on many vehicles, but the increasing popular rack and pinion system is the most common on most newer cars, trucks, and SUVs. And although that may sound complicated, it's really quite simple. Rack and pinion steering started becoming popular in the 1970s, particularly on vehicles with McPherson strut suspensions. A rack and pinion system uses fewer moving parts and pivot points than the older conventional steering, making it more accurate and responsive. A pinion on the end of the steering shaft meshes with the teeth on the rack. As the steering wheel is turned, the pinion turns and causes the rack to move in the opposite direction. We have a nice cutaway of a rack and pinion. You can see where the steering column is going to come into the pinion of the rack. It goes through a control valve. You can see the sealing rings on the control valve. And it comes down here, you'll see the small gear on the end of the pinion, and that's the rack assembly right here. You can see the rack teeth. Now there's two types of rack and pinion. One would be power assist and one would be non-power assist. Now we have a power assist rack. If it was non-power, it wouldn't have the control valve on here. On both ends of the rack is where the inner tie rod ends are located. That's part of the rack assembly. Now on the outside, this is where the outer tie rod ends would hook onto, and that's what hooks it on to our spindle or to the wheel end. Now, we mentioned this was a power steering rack. Now, let's talk about power steering a little bit. In order to develop the pressure to operate the rack, we need a pump. Now, this is an example of a pump right here. This is a good example. It's a cutaway. You can actually see the pump assembly inside of here. The control valve mounts right here. As the pump develops pressure, the pressure would come out the outlet of the pump and be fed into our rack. Now, something you want to do is you want to refer to any information or any labels that come with your rack assembly or with your power steering pump. Some of these are vehicle specific and some of them are just general cautions to watch for. Whenever you're installing the lines, the fittings onto the rack, this is a good example of what could happen. For one, it's easy to cross thread the fitting. The fitting is going to be made out of metal, the nut end of the fitting, and the rack's going to be made out of aluminum. If you cross thread it in there and you go to tighten it up, there's a good chance that this could happen. You'll actually crack the fitting, crack the rack, and it's destroyed. So you want to be very careful when you're starting the fittings that you don't cross thread it, even if it takes several attempts, because sometimes these are not very easy to get to, so it may be kind of hard to get it started in there straight. But just keep in mind, you should be able to tighten them by hand and then do the final tight with your wrench. Now, when you buy the power steering pump, you may receive a kit that'll come with the control valve and springs. Let's just open this up and show you what's inside of here. Now you've got the various pieces and the various O-rings. This is where the instructions is very important to follow this through because, like, for example, it'd be easy to install a valve backwards. This is also where your repair information would come in handy, or you can go to alldataDIY.com and get the information for your specific vehicle. Some of the problems you may notice with your rack and pinion steering or your power steering system, well, like for example, you might hear a noise. I mean, one of the first places to check would be your fluid level, the fluid condition, also the drive belt that drives the pump. But you may have a problem with the rack sticking, you might have a problem with it binding, you might have a vibration, you may have a noise in it. On our vehicle, we have a problem with the rack sticking. We've pretty much narrowed it down to being the rack and pinion. Let's get started with our repair.
As with any job, to do it right, you'll need the right tools. The nice thing is that jobs we'll be covering today don't require a large, expensive assortment. Basic hand tools are generally all you'll need. In case where a specialty tool is required, be sure to check with AutoZone's Loan a Tool program. They have many specialty tools that can help you complete your job a lot quicker and easier. The first things you'll need are a socket set, torque wrench, drop light, tape measure, tie rod separator, and a repair manual for your specific vehicle. You may also need screwdrivers or pliers to remove some components. We will also need power steering fluid to replace what will be lost during the repair.
Be cautious when working under the hood. If the engine has been running, components will be extremely hot, so be careful what you touch. When working around a running engine, it is important to be alert and never wear loose clothing or a necktie that can get tangled in belts, pulleys, or the fan. When lifting a vehicle, never work under it until it has been secured with wheel blocks and securely positioned on jack stands. A hydraulic jack alone is never enough. Be cautious when working with oils and chemicals. Many are damaging to the groundwater environment and toxic to people and animals. Never drain or pour chemicals into the ground or sewer systems. Local municipalities and counties offer resources for proper disposal. And always remember to wear your safety glasses.
Get in the zone, AutoZone.
Get the entire DVD for this repair and all other procedures covered in the Complete Car Care series at your local AutoZone store.